So now our favorite theory, plate tectonic theory. And earthquakes. So what kind of three plate margins we have studied? We have studied the first plate margin is a convergent plate margin. Second plate margin we have studied is divergent plate margin. The third plate margin which we have studied is transform kind of a plate margin. Now using this knowledge, what happens in a convergent plate margin? So in this convergent plate margin, the one plate goes below the other plate along a zone which is known as, and the resulting into folding up of the sediments of both the plates. The subduction occurs along a zone which is known as Benioff zone or subduction zone, and then there is a volcanic eruption. So this is a convergent plate boundary. What will it be associated with the earthquakes? Yes, it is associated with the fold mountains of the world. It is associated with the dangerous volcanoes or most violent volcanic eruptions of the earth. And third, it will also be associated with one of the most strongest, highest magnitude and deep focus earthquake, because the entire earth is being folded to form fold mountains. You can imagine the size of Himalayas. If this entire earth is being folded to form a large mountain of the size of an Himalaya, imagine the kind of pressure which will be put here. As a result, the rocks will be dislocated, the rocks will be folded, resulting into these areas having very, very high magnitude earthquakes. So the convergent plate boundaries are associated with high magnitude earthquakes. So we can first write as in this convergent plate boundaries, convergent plate boundaries earthquakes of high magnitude and deep focus. Why deep focus? Because the earth is the one crust of the earth is being subdued or going below the other crust, resulting into deep focus. Earthquakes are associated with convergent plate boundary. With the convergent plate boundary, that is due to the collision of the force. Due to the collision of the two plates. So the second kind of a plate boundary is a divergent plate boundary. Divergent plate boundary. What happens in the divergent plate boundaries? The plates move away from each other, resulting into the upwelling of magma or lava due to the upwelling of magma and forming mid-oceanic ridges. Obviously, there will be an upwelling of magma and the formation of an mid-oceanic ridges in this region. And as a result, again here the earthquakes will be, because see the plates are moving away from each other. Obviously, there is a movement of a plate and there is a earthquake. So, earthquakes are also associated with the divergent plate boundary. But generally, you can write associated with earthquakes, but generally moderate earthquakes occur in constructive, divergent, remember, is a constructive plate boundary. In the constructive plate boundary. Why? Because of slow rate of movement. Because of the slow rate of movement. So second plate tectonic theory is a divergent plate boundary associated with moderate earthquakes generally, and moderate earthquakes occur in this region because of the extremely slow rate of movement. Now the third is conservative plate boundary, or it is also known as transform plate boundary. It is also known as transform fault. How it is shown in the diagram? It is shown this way, that is the two plates are moving parallel to each other. So when the two plates are moving parallel to each other, see the earth is not a very smooth surface. So imagine these are the two different plates, and if they are moving parallel to each other on the surface of the earth, obviously there will be some kind of an friction resulting into, if I can feel the friction while moving this two part, that is the remote and a dust board. So obviously when the earth moves even a little bit in the regions of faulting, there will be earthquakes which will be generated. So these are the areas with strong earthquakes. Or we can just write they are associated with the earthquakes. Now you remember the theory, your lecture of volcanism or volcanoes. Was the transform plate boundary or the conservative plate boundary the third kind of a boundary, that is transform or conservative plate boundary? Was it associated with the volcanoes? No. The transform or conservative plate boundary was not associated with volcanism. Only the first two, that is the convergent and divergent plate boundaries, are associated with the volcanism, but the parallel or transform or plate boundary or the conservative plate boundary is not associated with volcanism, but it is associated with the strong earthquakes. So due to the creation of transform fault system, example we have already done in the plate tectonic lecture is San Andreas Fault, California. San Andreas fault system of California. They are an example of an conservative plate boundary. So all these three types of plate tectonic theory, how does it explain the earthquakes? All the three types of boundaries, that is the first is the constructive plate boundary or divergent plate boundary, which is formed along the mid-oceanic ridges, are associated with moderate earthquakes. The second is the constructive, is the destructive plate boundary, that is the area of a fold mountains are associated with deep focus and high magnitude earthquakes. Your recent example is the Nepal earthquake in the area of a folding or a destructive plate boundary or a convergent plate margin, that is coming together of our Indian plate, Asiatic plate and going below. Third, the transform fault region, that is the parallel movement of the two plates, are associated with again strong earthquakes due to creation of a faults. The example is San Andreas fault system of USA in California. Now if we try to draw a diagram, that is the world distribution of earthquakes. The world distribution of the earthquakes will be similar to our study of world distribution of the volcanoes. That is, the earthquakes will be because the earthquakes are so intimately related with the plate tectonics. So the earthquakes, the areas of the earthquakes will be similar to the three areas, that is the Circum-Pacific belt, the area of a strong earthquakes. Example वहाँ पे is Japan. Japan has regular earthquakes. The second is mid-Atlantic belt. Third is mid-continental belt. These are the areas of strong earthquakes, and then the areas somewhere in between, that is the miscellaneous areas such as the interplate region due to some other, such as due to hotspots or due to some other causes, or the areas of minor plate boundaries such as Bhuj earthquake is an example of an area of a minor plate boundary. There is a small plate here in that region, or the intraplate regions also are associated with the earthquake. So the basic diagram of the world distribution of the earthquakes will look as if So the first is the Circum-Pacific belt, that is the area surrounding the Pacific region, including the earthquakes of North America, South America and Japan, New Zealand, Philippines, Indonesia, etc. So the first belt is the Circum-Pacific belt. Why are there earthquakes in the Circum-Pacific belt? Due to the what kind of a plate boundary? See, it should come as soon as when we say Circum-Pacific belt, that means it is a plate boundary which is having an convergent plate boundary. due to convergence of Asiatic plate, American plates, and Pacific plate. Around 65% of world's earthquake occur in this region. Around 65% of world's earthquake occur in this region. The famous earthquakes are, the example is earthquakes of Japan, Philippines, North America, South America, New Zealand, are the earthquakes of this region. Even the Mexico, that is even in the Central America. The second region is the mid-Atlantic belt of an earthquakes. That is this region. Why this region? Because it represents a divergent plate boundary. This is the first region, this is the second region, is mid-Atlantic belt. I will write here mid-Atlantic belt. What does it represent? Divergent plate boundary. It is a divergent plate between the American plate, that is both the Americas, and Africa and Asia. And the third major region of now the earthquakes is the mid-continental belt. That is this belt, which covers even India, which covers the African region, which covers the African Rift Valley region, which covers the European region. That is, this entire belt is an example of the third belt of an earthquake, which is in mid. Why is this area downwards? Why is this line here downwards? Because of the African Rift Valley system. Rift Valley is an example of a faulting, and therefore there will be an earthquake. So this is the third region, is a mid-continental belt. Now why the earthquakes in this region? Because it represents the convergence of, because they represent the convergence of, because they represent the convergence of which plates? Indian plate and African plate. With Asian plate, with Asian plate, with the Asian plate, with the Asian plate. So, which will the Himalayan earthquake come in this belt? Where is the location of the Himalayas? Here. So, example is the Himalayan earthquake region. So, the example is, it will cover Himalayan earthquake region. It will cover the Himalayan earthquake region. Obviously, the earthquakes of North Africa, earthquakes of Alps, Alpine mountain system, the earthquakes of Himalayas. Now there will be some of the belts, for example, some will be scattered, that is the Koina earthquake region, Bhuj earthquake region. Now they do not come in any major belts, or the earthquakes of some of the minor belts. For example, we have done the major belts, major plates and minor plates in the areas of the plate tectonic theory. So the other fourth division of the world distribution of the areas will be the scattered places. For example, volcanic hotspots. For example, the minor plate boundaries. For example, reservoir induced earthquakes. So these are the regions of the earthquakes. So, but you remember that the area which is a plateau region, generally the area which is not a plate boundary, it is known as stable land because it has not undergone any changes from a long period of time. It is generally known as a stable land. So the plateau regions are generally free from the earthquakes, okay, or the zones of minimum intensity, but the earthquakes can occur anywhere. So just have a look at the world distribution of the earthquakes. Okay. So with this, now we will go to the next topic, that is India and the earthquakes. We will do this intensity zones later on in detail. Just to give you a brief idea of how big the Indian earthquake zone is divided. If you have a brief idea of how the Indian earthquake zone is divided, you will see that in India, the Himalayan region represents a plate boundary where the Indian plate is going below the Asiatic plate. So this is Asian plate or Eurasian plate. This is the boundary of a Indian plate. And while the middle portion represents the subduction zone which has been filled now by the sediment. So in India we can briefly divide the India into three seismic zones. The Himalayan zone of very high, that is this entire Himalayan zone of very intense earthquakes. That is, in this Himalayan zone there will be this is a subduction zone. This is a subduction zone. Where Indian plate is going below Asian plate. That means this is an area of a plate boundary, so this is an area of maximum intensity of earthquake. So Himalayan zone is an area of maximum intensity of an earthquake. Intensity of an earthquake. Now the rest part which is below the Himalayas is the alluvial plains of India. That is the city of Delhi, the city of Kanpur, Lucknow, which is just near the Himalayas, that is at the foothills of the Himalayas till the Vindhya region, because from the Vindhya region it is the start of the peninsular plateau. So this is a zone of, because it lies very near to the areas of earthquake, that is, it lies very near to the focus. So this is an area which will feel the tremors, because even if the tremors are generated here in this region, for example, if this is an epicenter, the tremors will be very strong in the Himalayan region, but the tremors will be somewhat lighter. Some kind of tremors will be seen in the remaining regions, while this region will be free of a tremor. So this is a zone of a moderate intensity, that is the plain region of India. The plain region of India is a zone of moderate intensity. It is a zone of a moderate intensities of an earthquake, while the last region, that is the entire peninsular plateau region, that is this region, including the Shillong plateau, including the Meghalaya plateau, that is the peninsular plateau region. Now you remember that the peninsular plateau is one of the oldest block of a land, and therefore it is one of the stable What do you mean by one of the most stable landmass in the terms of geography? One of the most stable landmass means there is no movement, not much major movement, that is no folding, no major faulting is occurring here. It is remaining stable. Therefore, it is a zone of minimum intensity. Therefore, it is a zone of minimum intensity of an earthquake. So, we can divide the earthquake regions of India into three parts. That is the Himalayan zone, the zone of maximum intensity, the plain region, the zone of moderate intensity, and the peninsular plateau region is the zone of minimum intensity. Details we will look in while doing the Indian geography part. So just have a look of the three types of three zones of earthquakes in India. That is the Himalayan region. Why Himalayan region is a zone of maximum intensity? Because it is a plate boundary, and whatever the movements which occur, they always occur along the plate boundary. It is a subduction zone. Then the plain region, because it is lying near to the subduction zone, lying near to the plain, lying near to the Himalayan plate boundary, it is a zone of moderate intensity. The peninsular plateau lies very far. It is an example, one of the most stable land masses in the world, one of the oldest land masses. Therefore, it is a zone of a minimum intensity. So, these are the now the hazardous effect of the earthquakes. hazardous effects of an earthquake. The earthquakes are termed as a natural disasters. In fact, in our recent memory, Nepal earthquake caused death of more than 9,000 people. So it is, the earthquake is considered as one of the most dangerous natural disaster, and because of the surprise element in it, that is, we cannot predict the earthquake. And there is some changes in the animal behavior, etc., but the prediction of the earthquake is still now not possible. That is, therefore, it has a surprise element and the people are not ready. In case of other natural disasters, for example cyclones, we know that the cyclone is coming. The meteorological department can predict the cyclones because the climatology is better studied with the help of satellites, with the help of instruments. But we cannot go deep inside the earth and see what is happening inside there. Therefore, our knowledge of geomorphology is very, very limited as compared to the other branches of geography. As a result of this, the earthquakes come with sudden intensity, people are unprepared, they can strike in any hour. For example, the Bhuj earthquake occurred on Sunday, and people were taken by surprise, killing many people. If it occurs during the night when the people are sleeping, it will also kill many people. But I want to ask you one question: does earthquake really kill the people, or is it buildings which kill the people? It is our structures, because if we consider the damage of the earthquakes, then the earthquake, if it strikes the unpopulated region where there is very, very less population or where there is no population, then it won't damage or it won't kill the people. So it is the buildings which will kill the people. If the buildings are well made, structural engineering is used, civil engineering is properly used, and if the buildings are made earthquake resistant buildings, then obviously the loss of human life will be very, very less. So at least we can save this tragedy. For example, earthquake strikes Japan at least once every day. Still, we do not see so much destruction in Japan in the killing of the people. So that means the hazardous effect of the earthquake, it is the buildings which kill the people, not exactly the earthquakes which kill the people. But we can still know the hazardous effect of the earthquake. It is damage to buildings, infrastructure, such as rail, road, factories, etc. That is railways, roadways, factories, dams. Second is loss of human life and property. Example, Nepal earthquake in our recent memory. But you again remember this, it is the buildings which will kill the people, not exactly the earthquakes which kill the people. So why I am telling you again and again this point, because you will require this knowledge. You can interrelate with the disaster management topic. You can relate this with your role as an administrator. What will you do if you are posted in an earthquake prone region? So loss of human life and property, what can you do? The first thing is you can stop corruption in this department. Then there are many scientific ways also which you can do, but the first thing is accountability and honesty, integrity. So third is fires. Why are the fires caused? Due to live wires, leakage of gas, etc. Fourth is landslides. That is the shaking of the earth in the mountainous region dislocates the land, resulting into landslide. We will be studying this landslide later on as a separate topic. So landslides, especially in the mountainous region. Causing landslides. Then fifth is flash floods. Flash floods. What are these flash floods? It is a flood again, but they come with an element of surprise. That is, they come suddenly due to an earthquake, and therefore they can cause loss of life and property. That is, they are dangerous. Now, why these flash floods are dangerous? If the flood is there in the normal condition, the administration or the people are ready for the flood. That is, they start moving toward the higher areas. They start collecting the essential items such as food, etc., and they start shifting or moving to higher regions which won't be affected by the floods. But in case of earthquake, just for example, I am giving you an illustration that if this is a dam which is there in a specific region, and if this is the entire village is there, or the city is there, which is located near somewhere near the dam. The water is stored in a reservoir. Wherever the earthquake will occur, suppose if the dam breaks during the earthquake, this entire water will come down and it will flood this entire city, causing lots of damage. Why? During the normal conditions, the dam acts as a reservoir. It helps the people. But if there is an earthquake of very, very strong magnitude, very strong intensity, if it cracks or leaks the dam, if it breaks the dam, then it will result into flash flood. People are not ready and the water comes gushing down, destroying the city, at least flooding the city. The second is, if there is a very strong earthquakes have even caused, if there is a river which is flowing in this region, very, very strong earthquakes have even caused the rivers to change their direction of a flow. So the flash floods may also cause if there is a fault here and if the river changes its direction of a flow from this region to the other region, so it will result into flash floods. Or the third is, if there is a temporary lake formed in an area in the mountainous region due to stones, etc., or due to collection of stones, and down there is an people which are staying, or there is a village here, and if there is a temporary lake, which is commonly seen in Indian geography, we will be doing it. If there is a temporary lake or if a river is there, and if during the landslide this entire rock gets dislocated, this entire water will come down and it will flood this. So the flash floods are the sudden floods which are caused due to earthquakes, or which may be caused due to earthquakes. Why due to earthquakes? So what are these? These are the sudden floods. and during the earthquakes caused due to breaking of dams, changing of river course, landslide, etc. That is, landslide, etc. will also result into a flash floods. One of the major hazardous earthquake, if you remember, is the tsunamis. Which this topic again we will deal in detail while dealing the oceanography part, that is the next part after geomorphology, climatology and then oceanography, a small part and very interesting part. So tsunamis, what are tsunamis? These are very high waves. Generated in the oceans during earthquakes. They are highly, very destructive, are very much destructive. So these are the hazardous effect of the earthquakes. You can elaborate them, very simple, but what are the geographical effects you should remember is the flash flood, landslide and the tsunamis, which we are going to study later on in detail. That is, what are these landslides, what are the flash floods, etc. Okay. Now, before we end with this topic of earthquake, one very small topic, that is the measurement of an earthquake. Or how are the earthquakes measured? You must have learnt about two things. That is, you must have heard two theories, that is magnitude and intensity. Sometimes it comes the earthquake with such and such intensity struck, destroying the people, destroying the building. Sometimes it comes an earthquake with the strength of such and such magnitude. Okay. So these are the two terms for the measurement of an earthquake. Now, as I told you earlier, if an earthquake, very strong earthquakes occurs in an unpopulated region, then yes, the strength of an earthquake will be very strong. It will change the shape of earth. It may result into some kind of a new change, such as a crack being developed on the surface of the earth, or a new landform being, a new fault being formed. But because this area is an unpopulated area, it will not have any loss of life property. It is an unpopulated area, it will not damage the infrastructure. So it is, because it is an unpopulated area, it won't result into the death of a people. Now, take another example. If an earthquake of a moderate intensity strikes an area which is very densely populated, in the area which is not well planned, and as a result there is lot of corruption going on, maybe in a developing country region, for example any developing country, where the houses are not strong, the housing quality is not well regulated, the construction quality is not well regulated, even the earthquake of a very moderate intensity will result into falling of buildings, damage to the entire infrastructure, resulting into the death of a people. So you see, the magnitude and intensity are two different concepts. The magnitude is the concept which measures the release, how much amount of energy is released by an earthquake, while the intensity measures the amount of damage done to life and property of human beings, to animals, to the structures, etc. caused by an earthquake. So the earthquake of a same magnitude will have different intensity in the different areas. In the unpopulated area, the earthquake of the same magnitude will have less intensity, while in the populated region, the earthquake of the same magnitude will have different intensity. So, in the measurement of earthquake, so there are two terms associated with the measurement, that is the magnitude and the intensity. Now, as I told you, in the areas, magnitude and intensity. In the areas, as I told you, give you an example that in the areas of highly populated areas, there will be an earthquake of less magnitude can cause much more damage. So what is this magnitude? Magnitude is the amount of energy released during an earthquake. That is how much amount of energy is released during an earthquake. So the magnitude measures amount of energy released during earthquake. That means it measures the size of an earthquake. That means it measures the size of earthquake. It measures the size of an earthquake. On the other hand, the intensity measures the actual shaking of the earth. Measures the degree of actual shaking of the earth. That how much the earth has shaken. Now here, magnitude is measuring the how much amount of energy is released. It is not measuring the impact of that release of energy. The impact of that release of energy is measured by the intensity. If that area is very near to the epicenter, then there will be more shaking of the earth, resulting into more damage of life and property. So more the earth shakes, the more there is more damage of life and property. So intensity will measure the loss of life and property by causing shaking of the buildings, etc. So as a result of this, we can say, because it is just measuring the amount of energy released, we can say it is a quantitative measure. Measure of size of an earthquake, while this is a qualitative measure. Of degree of actual shaking of the earthquake. That is the quality of an earthquake. What do you mean by quality of an earthquake? That means, did it cause maximum destruction, did it cause some destruction, or it just was shaking? More destruction, higher intensity of an earthquake. Now, it will depend, other than the amount of energy released, as I have told you, it will also depend on where it strikes, whether it strikes a populated region, whether it strikes a developed country versus developing country, or whether an underdeveloped country. So it is measured by an intensity. Now obviously, because there are two different measures, there will be different scales to measure. Here the scale is Now remember, very important, medical representative. You just remember this as magnitude and Richter scale. So it is measured with the help of a scale known as Richter scale. Which is an logarithmic scale. Or we just remember it as a log scale. What is a log scale? Log scale means those scales in which increase by 1 implies 10 times increase. So it is measured with the help of a Richter scale. So magnitude, Richter scale, medical representative. This is how you remember MR. So magnitude of an earthquake, Richter scale, it is measured with the help of an Richter scale. On the other hand, the intensity, here it is measured with the help of a scale is modified, or now it is modified. Earlier it was just a Mercalli scale. It is a modified Mercalli scale. So it is measured with the help of a modified Mercalli scale. IM, you remember intensity, IM, intensity and Mercalli scale, or you can remember IMS for intensity and MR for magnitude. So this intensity scale depends on 3 factors. It measures the intensity based on the perception of people and animals. It measures the intensity based on how the structures have performed, that is the performance of buildings, performance of structures. It measures the intensity based on performance of buildings, structures, etc. And third, it measures the intensity based on changes in natural surroundings. It measures the intensity based on changes in natural surroundings. So are there any changes which occur in natural surrounding? So the modified Mercalli scale, perception of animals and people. For example, a moderate magnitude earthquake, but if it is causing large kind of a damage or large shaking of the earth, the perception of the people will change. Now why it is, I am coming to the next point here. Performance of the buildings, that is, if the buildings fall, if the performance, it all depends on the quality of the buildings. If the quality of the buildings is less, the buildings will fall. Falling of the buildings will result into killing of more people, destruction of more lives and damage to more property also, and changes in the natural surroundings. For example, too much shaking of the earthquake may result into landslide, it may result into change in the course of a river. So how is this for natural surrounding performing as compared to the normal earthquake? So these are the different regions of these are the different measures of the modified Mercalli scale. Now you remember, again, look at this. In fact, take these important points. Our magnitude is the measure of the amount of energy released. The intensity measures shaking of an earthquake. So it is a quantitative measure, this is a qualitative measure. Why? It is just determining the amount of energy released. It is not determining the amount of impact on the area in the terms of destruction of life, change in the natural surrounding, which is done here in the intensity scale. Therefore, it is a qualitative measure. It is measured by a Richter scale. It is measured by a modified Mercalli scale. So one more point in this between magnitude and intensity, just have before I rub it, is you can just have a look at it. Is the change in magnitude and intensity with respect to the distance, or why the, even if the energy released is same, will there be any difference or magnitude? Now suppose this is a bulb of light. This is a bulb which is giving a light in this region. If the amount of, this is an 100 watts bulb is there. Or take this tube light for example. Now this amount, what is the amount of energy released by this 100 watt bulbs is obviously 100 watt. Okay, so you take this, what is the amount of energy released is a magnitude. So take this, compare this with an earthquake. So this 100 watt bulb will release 100 watt of energy. Now when the person is based on the point A, point B, point C, this area will receive maximum amount of light. Here it will be comparatively dark, and here this will be more darker. So this point will be bright, there will be comparatively dark, and this will be darker because you are moving away from the source of the light. So as a result of this, the more closer you are to the bulb, there will be more light. Same thing you apply here. The magnitude, which is the amount of energy released, will be having a same value across the earth. That is, the earthquake with 6 magnitude has struck XYZ region. It will be having a same value across that. It will be amount of energy released will be the same, but the intensity will be different. If this is a place where the earthquake has happened, the amount of energy released, the degree of shaking of the earth will be more. Here the degree of the earth shaking of the earth will be moderate or lesser than A. Here, because it is the farthest away, it will be still, it will be very, very least shaking. So the intensity, you remember, in the intensity, which is the shaking, has higher value, is high near the epicenter, and decreases as we go away from epicenter. So this is the difference. So we have made the difference. Magnitude is the quantitative measure of the amount of energy released, while the intensity is a qualitative measure of the degree of the shaking. Magnitude is measured by Richter scale, intensity is measured by modified Mercalli scale or the Mercalli scale. Magnitude has same value across the earth. It is not based on distance, but the intensity is based on distance. It is high near the epicenter and decreases as away from the epicenter. So these are the differences we have done. So this finishes the measurement of an earthquake. If any doubt, you just look to this, an example that is in the 100-watt bulb, though it is releasing the same amount of energy, 100 watt, as you are going away from the bulb, the amount of lightness or intensity of the bulb goes on decreasing. The same is related to the earthquake. So this ends the topic of the earthquake, and our next topic is now the rocks of the earth.